Okay, so after a break of a number of weeks, we are back to the maamar of V'yodaita again. Anshei of the Yeh Tafresh Nun Zayin from the Rebbe Rashab. We are on page Nun Beis in the Sefer, almost the middle of the page, Ubira. So, because there's a break, we actually need a more lengthy review, but we'll see what there's too much. On the one hand, there's too much to review. On the other hand, there's only the part that's really, really negated to us at this point, is the idea that he started off with the question that how could you say that Havaya Elikim, he brought a Zohar that says Havaya Elikim Kulachad. So how could you say we on the pasuk V'yodaita Moskve that we understand that the same Eibusha that operates through Havaya also operates through Elikim, but obviously the Zohar is coming along to add something to that. He says Havaya Elikim Kulachad. The Kulachad means it's not that there's two separate, one Eibusha operating through two separate modes, but actually Havaya and Elikim themselves are all one. It's not. There's no point of separation. It's only, so he spent a lot of time developing the questions of why that's problematic, because whether Havaya is and Elikim is Kalim, so from a number of different angles he developed the question. So then he set out to answer the question of how Havaya Elikim Kulachad, but the part that which is something also he built up towards, but the final conclusion is that he explains he's using a mashal of a Rebbe and a Talmud, the Mashpia and a Makabel, that the Rebbe is teaching very deep ideas, and that there's no way the student would be able to grasp unless he brings it down to a much lower level, and he even dresses it up in a mashal, in an analogy. So he explained that that does not mean, so the way he explained it is that in the mashal, the mashpia, it's not that he took away part of the idea. He removed part of the idea that's not being presented. No, he took the whole idea and he packed it in to this packaging, to this delivery system. It's all there. It's the recipient is not going to see it all there. The recipient will see what is shaykh to him, what he's capable of grasping. But from the perspective of the mashpia, it's all there. It says, in fact, there was something added to the mashpia, because now he has because he had to bring it down into a tangible mashal. He now has for himself a tangible, because he sees in the mashal how it contains everything. He now has a more tangible expression of what before for himself was a more abstract idea. By having to bring it down, making it more tangible for the recipient, he actually now has a more tangible way of seeing the reality of the idea that before was abstract for him. But the recipient only he can't even take the idea. He has to first get the mashal, and then from the mashal, from the analogy, try to figure out, extract the message. And so clearly the message he's getting is on a very limited level. And yet, it's all there. So we say, okay, it's all there for the mashpia, but it's still hidden from the Makabel. It's not all there for the Makabel. In fact, the whole reason you said you had to cover it up was because he can't receive it all. You just said that's the reason. So it's not. So again, the cover-up, the Elikim, the Havaya Elikim in the Nimshal, so the cover-up is real for the recipient. It's not the same thing relative to the recipient. It's just, no. It's the same thing relative to the recipient, because we find this concept of that if he puts in the effort to really work on the mashal and the explanations and the wording and the details of everything this Rebbe said, if he will really put in the work over the years, he will actually be able to get to the idea the way it was by his Rebbe. It will be Aymer al Das Rabbi. So there's a process. It takes time, it takes effort, but there's a process that you can get the whole package. Everything that's in there was meant for you to get the whole thing. So it's a packaging, it's a delivery system, not just to give you what you can handle, but it's a packaging and delivery system to give you the whole package. But you're going to have to work to get there. So he says, so he's going to explain how, the line that he said before is, 2 lines, I'll go back a few lines. So he says, K'maykin Yuvim B'hanimshal, the be'emes yachal kol echad ve'echad lavi l'bchinas gili pnimius v'atzmius and save the Shem Havai. That every person, be'emes for real, every person is capable of coming to the revelation of the light of the innermost essence of the Ein Sof of Shem Havaya, sheyor begili benafshe. That this should shine forth in a revealed way in his soul. Yes, Elikim is the packaging through V'yodaita, that Havaya hu Elikim. Through your avodah, you can reveal within the elikim, within the packaging, within the delivery system, the entire in the kalim, you can get the full oil in your nefesh. That's for real. So he says, it takes work, it takes yigiyah, exertion. Yigiyah's nefesh, yigiyah's basel, hos halamas vester. He needs yigiyah's nefesh and yigiyah's basel to remove the cover-ups and the concealments, but yes, through that he can come to B'chinas Gili Pnimis V'Atzmus Ein Sof, Masha L'maylam B'chinas Chetzenis Shenasa Makalelis. The innermost essence of the Ein Sof, which is far, far above the external aspect, which is the part that became the source of created worlds. You can experience the revelation of the Ein Sof that's far beyond that if you put in the work. So he explains, now he's getting to explain, so what kind of work are we talking about? What's this Avodah? So he says, Ubira Inyan, and the explanation of the matter is, Sarach L'Haktim Tchila Inyan HaNisyonos. We have to preface first the matter of Nisyonos. What is this idea that God, the Eibishter, tests people, and we know the first time we encounter this concept is in the Torah with Avraham Avinu, and later it says about the Yidden in traveling in the desert for 40 years and with the man. That one of the things it says is that the Eibishter is testing you. That there's this concept that God actually tests a human being, tests a person to see if he will be able to withstand the test. Okay? So what is a test? A test is no new special job, no new special mission, no new special... A test means do what you're supposed to do, and now there's going to be a challenge that you have to overcome in order to do what you're supposed to do. Okay? In some cases, yes, it also could involve a special mission of, take your firstborn son, but that's not usually the common case of Nisyonos. Usually the common case of Nisyonos is just about going on, being and doing what it's supposed to do, but you're confronted with challenges. So he says, what is the divine intent with this whole idea of testing? So, obviously, this is a subject that is developed in many places in Chassidus from many different angles. He's not going to do a comprehensive treatment of Nisyonos here, but he wants to bring out this point of how Nisyonos in Avodas Hashem, that is the way that you're going to be able to, that is the real delivery system, the real package, the real way you can extract the revelation of the infinite light from within the concealment of the created world, which is a mashal for Ein Sof. That's all it is. It's not a... Says elsewhere it is explained. There is also a sikha in Torah Shalom where he talks about this. Elsewhere it's explained that the entire purpose of the descent of the soul into the body, which is a tremendous descent, that because before it descended into a body, it was standing in the higher world, in a supernal world, be it Began Eden HaTachton, or Began Eden Elyon, depending on the level of the neshama where it was before it came down, whether it was in the lower Gan Eden or the higher Gan Eden, Ki Yodua Me'inyan Me'ayin Basachu. As is known, so this discusses on the topic of Me'ayin Basa, that Akavya Ben Malala tells you that that's one of the things you should keep in your focus on, keep your eye on Me'ayin Basa, that this ayin doesn't mean from non-existence, it's referring to not a non-physical existence state, but a lofty spiritual existence. That's your ayin. And there in Gan Eden it grasped godliness with its intellect, and it stood in its place with love and fear of Hashem, and it was in a state of self-nullification in Elokus, meaning that it experienced reality as Elokus is the reality, and I'm just bottled to that reality. My existence is just a part of the godly reality. It's not that I have my own separate existence. So Chassidus brings this pasuk that Eliyahu Hanavi says on more than one occasion with the Achab and others, that he says Chayavash in different wordings, Chayavash Amadati Levonav, that he uses an expression of taking an oath, and he refers to the Eibush as the one I stood before him. So when did you stand before him? You're like everybody else, like every other human being. He became a malach, but I mean, when did you especially stand before him? The Amida Lamaila, what he's talking about is before he ever descended into this world. The Amida Lamaila Shenishashim Amida V'yeshiva, that when we talk about standing up above in a world where obviously there's no standing or sitting, those are not concepts, those are not actual realities in that world, but it's a conceptual standing. Conceptual standing is the idea of bittul as explained elsewhere, and just like in our world, when the king enters or when the king goes on parade or whatever, whenever there's an official open appearance by the king, everybody else, their whole, it just stands. That's what you do, and that itself is everyone stands at attention. The standing at attention is itself the biggest expression of the fact that I can't make any move on my own. The king is everything. That's Bezerampin and in Malchus the Arab, but certainly Lamaila, it's a much deeper, a more pneumistic experience, especially when it's in a neshama and not in a guf. Okay, so V'yardu b'seis ha'madrega be'olam hazeh, and it descended in the hidden stairwell, meaning it descended through the levels into Olam Hazeh, into this world. Shenisrachka me'er havayah, that it became distance from the light of Hashem. She'ena ma'aseges elokus k'mei she'isiga l'mayla. It does not grasp godliness the way it does not have a conceptual grasp of godliness the way it did up above. This is because the godly light, the way it shines in the lower worlds, it's obviously there, it's present. That's what's that's what makes everything exist. But it's hubetachlis hatzimtzum v'ahelam, is in a state of ultimate constriction and concealment. B'chinas ha'ara, the aspect of ha'ara, the things we discussed earlier on in this maamar, a glimmer of a glimmer, chetzenius levad, something that is only the most external aspect of the divine light, and even that most external, superficial glimmer of a glimmer comes in a megushim dika way. So when he says it doesn't mean that it comes in Haksham, it doesn't mean it actually comes in physical form, because it's godly light, but it means I know asaga megushemes chulu, meaning that the grasp, even when we think in terms of divine energy in our world, and we think of it in grubber material terms, because that's how our minds take things. So we think of like in terms of energy, electricity. We use concepts that we don't think of it as it is in the godly reality. So it's not, has no relativity at all. It's completely removed from the comprehensive grasp of the spirituality of the godly light that it grasped in the higher world. Which is to say that the difference between the way the neshama experiences things in the upper world and the way it experiences down here is two things that differentiate up there and down here. One is one is that the godly light, what shines there, is a revelation of a higher light. So it's a higher revelation. And that revelation doesn't come in a megushim dika form. It doesn't come in a form that's corrupted by material and physical experience, but it comes in a purely spiritual state. And therefore the Av Yira that has down below is incomparable, again, completely not relative to the level of love and fear of Hashem, not the level and not the quality of the love and fear of Hashem that it had, the neshama had up above. But in addition to the fact, it descended to be an Mechina of Hester Panim. These are the cover-ups and the concealments that cover up and conceal the light of God and His holiness, meaning Hester Panim means not just how much I can relate to the godly light, but Hester Panim means that I can experience reality without, as if there's no godly light here at all, that I'm living completely in darkness, that God's face is hidden from me, and I don't even sense His presence, and certainly not the light of God and His holiness that is hidden from me. And that itself requires a lot of exertion and a lot of effort to even come to the godly light, even on its more limited and more megushim dika form. That itself requires tremendous effort and exertion.
What are the two? It's in two details. It's not the same. What are the two?
It's easier to say in Yiddish, you know what I mean? No, but you have to, people understand. Lamaila is a hechera, it's a hechera, and it's not so, like the story of they say with the people, the story they say with the Kosher Tzemag, and I heard from Rabbi Fitzgerald, and he said about the Kosher Tzemag, that he was once in a state of like a shtickle dveikis, b'soif yama, he was maamar just like skin and bones, and he would spend most of his time in bed. He would like fiatish, they would bring his bed in, and he was like, come out, got, mufshit from my own house already. And he turned once by a tish, he turned once to his son, he says, he's already not, he's already like without a goof. So his son, he has no goof anymore. So his son tapped his father's hand and he said, Tata, I feel good. He says, well, the taps with goof feels too goof. Because you're touching with goof, that's why you feel goof. But the truth is, there's no goof here. So this idea that the tools that you're using, the neshama has to operate through the body and the physical mind and the physical body. So the tools are just more coarser and less spiritually refined. So even the ideas and concepts that it does grasp, it grasps them in a less spiritually refined way, but in a more physical, concretized, more tangible, materialistic way. So, first of all, it has access to the God experience is higher. It's just a higher light, a higher level of understanding, and then there's a lower light and a lower level of understanding, and even that is already tainted by the fact that you have to use physical tools. In addition, he said you have another problem down here is that God's face is hidden. You have to go searching for that light. That limited light that you have to get that has these two disadvantages relative to what the neshama had out of above, it's not even like so readily available and accessible to you. You have to go look for it and work hard for it in order to get it. So he says, you read the Gedolei Miyai. So this is a tremendous Yerida for the neshama that was up above. So what's it about? So he says, what was explained elsewhere is that he nitachas kavanas yiridos b'shvil anisyenis shabayim la'adam. Shehem Ebchinas has to upon him. The ultimate kavanah of its descent down below is that third detail that we mentioned, that the Hester upon him. That's actually what it comes down here for. It's for the nisyanis that come to the person that are completely Ebchinas has to upon him. Where like in situations where Chas v'Shalom, nobody should know from it, where there's a stalkus of the flow of life energy, when the Eibusha withholds health of the body or money, financial support, in those situations where the Eibusha, where you find yourself not where the flow of energy of life is being held back, is being interrupted, so you're like feeling like, where is God in my life? On a personal level, that is the reason why a person comes down for those nisyonos kedei lahaster, that his darkness is of the shefa of the divine flow is specifically kedei lahaster al v'chayis savayim kedushosei, to conceal the light and divine energy of Yud Kei Vav Kei and His holiness, of the Eibusha and His holiness, v'liyas meineah, and to create an obstacle, internally and externally, from within and from without. That's part that's built into the system that is to do things that the whole reason the soul came down here for is to encounter those challenges to anybody who wants to come and get close to Hashem in his service of tefillah and Torah. You're interested in coming close to Hashem? Aha! Now we have the obstacle course for you. This is it. But that's what the Neshama came down for. The Neshama came down for that Hestepanim experience, that to run that obstacle course. You want to be in, you want to play wiffle ball in your backyard? Fine. You want to play in the big leagues? You want to play in the big leagues? We have a lot of challenges and a lot of things that you have to overcome before we're giving you even a shot at anything. So the thing is, that's really what the Neshama came down here. The Neshama came down here for that obstacle course where Hashem's face is hidden, and I have to go find it by overcoming, and that he should withstand the test against every obstacle and hindrance. It is specifically for this, to play in the big leagues, to run that obstacle course, to do the marathon, the triathlon, the decathlon, all the challenges that you have to do, in order to. That was the purpose that Neshama came down here for, to build a connection that comes through overcoming challenges. because when it was up before in Gan Eden, it's described as oimed. It's described as stationary, because it's only so far it could go in a stationary position. In order to take off like a rocket, to not be an oimed anymore, and to achieve and reach the revelation of a much higher light, that you need to come down here into darkness and run the obstacle course to find the face of God, to find that little bit of love and fear that came so easily, and a fraction of what came so easily to you up above. This is it. That's what the neshama comes down here for. No, I'm sorry. We have to understand. Okay, we said that's what's explained elsewhere. How is it that banging your head against the wall? In other words, we understand how there are processes where you take in a little bit of light at a time and you gradually expand your capacity to reach greater and greater light. Right? We understand, let's see, the light of intellect. A person starts off with a limited intellect. The more they work it, the more they take it, the more they can expand. What I knew yesterday, I could build on that and know a little more and broaden like different faculties and capacities. A person who, loves one, became a father and he loves his child, and now he has another child. He has to expand on what he had, Right? Because I'll say that the heart doesn't have limits, it doesn't have boundaries. You have to open up a little more. You expand your capacity. You expand your. So we understand how you start with a little light and you work your way up to a greater light. Here he's saying, no. You leave the light and go to the darkness. You want to run away from the light and go to the deepest darkness in order to get a greater light. How does going to darkness get you to a greater light than if you would just continue progressing in the world of light itself? However, the matter is, what is the idea of nisyonis? The idea of nisyonis are cover-ups and concealments that cover up and conceal the truth. That's all they do. That's what an Anshei is. You can't see the truth. Because if a person did know the truth exactly as it is, there would be no Nisayan in this at all. There's no test, no challenge. There's nothing to it. If you knew the truth, it's not like a physical obstacle course where literally you have to push your muscles to do things that they weren't normally meant to do, and so on and so forth. Here, it's the whole concept of an Anshei is a very different kind of challenge. It's a challenge where it only exists because you can't see the truth as it is right now. You're just in a dark place. But if you could see the truth as it is, it wouldn't be any challenge at all. Right? If you could see, let's see, you want to waste time playing solitaire on your phone or here? That's choice number one. And choice number two is connect to infinity for all eternity and experience godly delights. Should I take the safe or should I take the this? And if I could see that, well, duh, it wouldn't there would not be a challenge here, right? It's only a challenge because I can't see the truth. I cannot see the truth. And therefore, I can pile on. Or I can tell myself, it's not for me, I'm not this, and I'm too tired, I'm too this, and I have all kinds of reasons why, right? But if there was a choice between, if someone said a choice here, you could take $1 or $100,000. What you have to do is reach out your hand. You get one choice. Do you want the $1 or $100,000? Could you come up with any reason why you only want the $1? Probably not. I mean, unless you have some kind of real fear of of wealth and abundance, whatever. Or we think the IRS is out to get you. But
the problem is when the 100,000 looks like monopoly dollars. Yeah.
I'm saying, but when you can really see, the two choices, it's not a challenge. It's not this. It's not there's no. I don't know. I have to think it over. I have to consider all the sides of that. I'm not sure. It's not a question. It's not a thing. There's no. So if you can see what the two choices were, that it's incomparable. It's a gazillion, trillion, whatever numbers you can come up with is completely not in the same realm. It's completely not in the same reality, and it's completely what a neshama craves. The neshama has no interest in any of the other options. It's not like the neshama has a competing option. You have to give it a competing nefesh in order to have a competing option. It's not even interested in that at all. So he says, so the whole union of the Nisayan is Kim Kol. So if you knew the truth as it is, there would be no Nisayan at all. Kim Kol Inyan Nisayan of Neshamag Master Alamas. The union of the Nisayan is that it covers up and conceals the truth. By withstanding the test, you come to the truth that's hidden behind that wall. Okay, there's a wall in your way, and you bang your head into the wall till the wall breaks, as the Rebbe Rashab told the Friedrich Rebbe. It's not an Indian to bang your head into the wall till your head breaks. The Indian is to bang your head into the wall till the wall breaks. So when the wall breaks, that's when you get the real truth. That's when the truth comes out. So that's how you unpackage the within that package, within that concealment, within that cover-up contains all the highest, deepest light. Like the Nisayin of Avraham Avinu in Ur Kasdim, that they threw him into a furnace of fire, a burning furnace. He did not know that he would not be burnt. Because if he knew that he would not be burnt, there would be no test at all. If he knew, I'm not going to be burnt. So the whole test is he didn't know the truth of what would end up happening. Because he did not know of this. He thought that he will certainly be burnt up, just like according to the rules of nature, fire burns. He had no possible thought or consideration that God is going to go out of his way and make any special miracle for him. He was confident and certain that he would be burnt up. It is known that the word hateva, is 86.
When it says that Avraham knew that who lo yadash lo yisaref, means he thought.
Rak choshav shabada yisaref. He adds the words.
So
Rak choshav shabada yisaref.
That he wasn't sure. The sign is that he's not sure if the Eibishter is ready to back.
No, the sign is the other way. He thought he's certainly going to get burned, and that's it. And the sign is do what the Eibishter wants, even though you're not going to. Even though that's it. It's curtains. It's lights out. It's end of the game, and you just keep going. But this is the truth. This is that, and I'm not. So he says, now the fact is that this relates to our conversation, to our maamar, to our pasuk, because we're talking about knowing that Avayu Elikim. So this idea of Nisyanis that we're describing here in the middle of the story of Avraham Avinu is actually that the Teva is Bigamat, Ha Teva is Bigamat Elikim. They're both 86. All of the natural properties that are present in the world, the fact that we say that certain things in the world, in reality, have natural tendencies, qualities. That's only from the garments and concealments of the name Elikim. As we explained earlier and discussed at length earlier in the maamar, that it's through the name Elikim, which is actually the only divine name that is a plural. Elikim, Yud Mem is the plural, is because that's where the name through which the vision and limitation, which is the character traits of plurality and multiplicity, so that's where it comes. She'esh yisrei v'mayim yechaber, that fire should burn and water should extinguish the fire. That this one, its natural property is that it's hot, and this one's natural property is that it's cold, etc. for all other things. But from the perspective of the Shem Havaya, which is without any such limitations, there is no such limiting and distinctions and separations between water and fire at all. Mitzad the name Yud Kevavke, they can both exist, but it doesn't have to be with those properties. It could be that water would not extinguish fire and fire would not burn. Like the famous story of Rabbi Chanina ben Doisav, Misha Amal Hashem v'yidolik, Yemel l'chaymetz v'yidolik. That the one who said to oil that it should be ignited and burned can also say to vinegar that it should be ignited and burned. Like we find that there is such a thing as fire, water and fire that do not extinguish each other. So normally the way we find that is if you need a pot to put a pot of water on the fire, so the fire is not evaporating, not consuming the water, and the water is not extinguishing the fire. But there's this concept of fire and water that do not extinguish each other. We find this concept in the spiritual realm, where our sages say, describing that imay in the supernal realms there is rulership and fear, and it continues. The same passage continues. He makes peace in his lofty habitat. So, what's the combination of these two? Hamshel v'fachad and Eis Shalom B'Mreim. The Mechol Sar Shamayim, v'Gabriel Sar Shalesh v'Eina Mechavim Zezeh. That Michael, the ministering angel of water, and Gabriel, the ministering angel of fire, are in the supernal realms. They exist in complete cooperation, and they do not extinguish one another, even though they represent opposite forces. Sometimes you actually find that instead of the water extinguishing the fire, now if you have tiny amounts of water, it won't extinguish the fire. But here we had a case in the story of Eliyahu where there was massive amounts of water, and yet the fire burnt up the water against the rules of nature. Because all of this is completely above nature. And at time, that's because this is from the aspect of the Aryan Seif that is built by Gvul, that is completely unlimited, in which the limitations of nature don't exist at all. It's not like it can overcome. It's so amazing that it can overcome the limitations. No, nature is a superimposed plurality and distinctions and separations and limitations that don't exist from in building Balgvul. Building Balgvul, they're not a factor. It's not like they need a special override. because there are no agbolas at the club, because it is built bagul. Amnam hanhagas olam hu al pi agbol l'shem elikeh. It is in fact true that the way that the world is conducted and maintained is based on the limitations of the limiting energies of Shem Elikeh. Hagam, although it's also true that Havayu HaMahava, that Havaya is the Mahava of all of existence, but the Anhaga is through Shem Elikeh. The Kol Savas, as we said earlier, the Kol Savas, who are the Skalos Keich HaPeil, Gemeshikosa Havayu Malachula Kenal Be'era, because we said that every Asamas is through the Skalos Keich HaPeil, as we explained earlier, that anything that gets done, meaning it wasn't before and now it's getting done, the power that making it get done has to be revealed. It's not something that can that can happen as an automatic cause and effect because it wasn't here before. So when we spoke about it earlier, we used the example of somebody throwing a ball. You could have an infinite power to throw an infinite number of balls for an infinite number of years. The ball is not going anywhere until you actually pick it up and throw it. It doesn't matter how much the greatness of the power. If there's an actual pa'ula that's going to happen, the pa'ula requires that the Keich HaPeil be expressed. Are you expressing it fully? Are you expressing your infinite power of throwing a ball? Your infinite? No, you just give a very limited expression. You have this infinite power. But in order to, if something happened, if there's a pa'ula that something was acted upon, then the actor has to show up. So, as we explained earlier, so the Havaya is the Mahava, because the Pa'ula requires the Keich HaPeil, and all the Keich comes from of creating things only comes from the name Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's not, the name Elikim is not creating anything on its own. The power of the finite is just to it's just in the packaging to impose finite forms on the creations, but the creative ability itself is from the infinite force. So it's so we said the divisions come from Elikim. The Anhaga is from the Agba is from the Agba of Shem Elikim. That's Havas is from Shem Havai. The way it works is that it's the Eravai, the way it shines through the Shem Elikim, which is V'chinas Halam B'has, the love of V'chinas Gvul. Yes, it's revealed. The power of the actor, the power of the actor has to be revealed for the act to take place, but it's not revealed as he is. It's revealed through this means of Shem Elikim, which covers up the infinite nature of the light, in order for it to come in a way of gvul, of finite, in gvul ateva, and that is the limitations, the boundaries, the borders of nature, that we say things have specific, limited properties, that water extinguishes and fire burns. Avram did not think that the Eibishter would conduct himself because the way the world is conducted is through Shem Eligim. He knew the Eibishter could do anything he wants, but he had no reason to think that the Eibishter would conduct himself with him in a way that's L'mayla Mi'ateva, but rather the Eibishter would conduct himself according to nature, that fire burns. When we come Makim, Ahmad bin Esayer, he stood firm in his test. Shleiliyas nifrid be'elikus, not to become a nifrid, to be separated from godliness. Im shayilay me'niyas yikum gedela. Even they had tremendous obstacles and hindrances. Kenimraid v'sayato, like Nimrod and his supporters. Sharatzu v'servichu, that they wanted to burn him. Those are, using Avraham Avinu's personal story as the analogy, but that's the idea that we spoke about before, that there are the cover-ups and concealments that come from the natural order of the world, and ziz kolshu. Still in all, he didn't budge the slightest budge. Chas v'sholem. Amad neged kol minei ma'akev, and he stood up against all obstacles and all hindrances, anyone who tried to get in his way, try to hold him back. V'neged kol alamas v'esterim, all the cover against all the covers and concealments. V'holach v'sarif b'kivshin ha'esh, and he went in order to be burnt up in the fiery furnace. He was faced with the choice: separate yourself from God and live, remain connected to God and be burnt up. And he chose remain connected to God and be burnt up. That was his choice. His not choice was, and maybe I'll get saved and I'll get out of it. No, his choice. He lived in his world of concealment. Those were the two choices. That was the deal. Go with God and die. Reject God and live. Go with God and die. And he he stood up against this test, and therefore a miracle was done for him, and he was saved. Which is to say that through the fact that he stood firm in the face of his test, he removed the garments of nature. These are the various ways that the divine light is enclosed, and by sterim and the concealments through which it's concealed, which come shemitzat shem elikim, that come from, or originate from the shem elikim. The hair leibkin is gilead and seif habilti b'algvul, and the Eibush shone forth for him an aspect of the revelation of the infinite light that is infinite, without any limitation, unlimited. It's not that okay, we're gonna fight off the fire, we're gonna hold it back from burning. No, it's not. When you have the revelation of Ein Seif Habilti B'Gvul, there's no fire that burns. There's no. That's already that's in the from that experience of reality. There are no finite forms, so fire and finite characteristics and traits and so on. So the fire, when it's in that reality, doesn't burn because it's above all limitation. It's above kanal, the Masha'esh Seidev, as we said before, that fire burns. So that is based on the specific limitation imposed by the garments of nature. Aval mitzadeh v'tzeif habilti b'gvul ein ha'esh seidev klal chulei pnei she'im begeder hagbola klal chulei. But from the perspective of the infinite light that is without any limits, the fire does not burn at all because it doesn't have within it it's not in the category, it's not in the realm of having any specific limits because it's infinite. Just that he came to the revelation of the infinite light, that was specifically because he withstood the test. Because you don't get access to the Eir and Seva Bildi Bagvul from the regular order of how the world is run. because the Anhag of the Elam is, yes, it's a Gilui Shem Havaya, but it's a Gilui Shem Havaya the way it comes through Shem Elokev, which is only an external. So as hard as you're going to work to try to find God in the world, you're going to search for the light and you're going to find God in the world. You're only getting a limited glimmer of through searching for God in the world. You have to be able to in order to get to that, to the true reality of God as He's not with the cover up, to go get past all the cover-ups and limitations. That's only specifically through an Nisayon, as he will continue to explain.
What's the off to? How is he magdir Nisyanis? He's explaining.
The biggest Hagdara of Nisayon is that it's you don't know the truth. The truth is hidden from you. God's truth is hidden.
He aligned it with because that's higher than Teva. When a person goes through this.
Well, that's how he explained how he tried to explain how Nisyanis, you are leveraging the Nisyanis of this world in order to get to a higher Gilui. He said, so he's trying to explain how that works.
Yeah, wow.
So he's still in the middle in the process of explaining, but that's why he's emphasizing the fact that through the normal channels of light, the light that's available and accessible in the world is filtered through Shem Elokev. It's only through Nisyanas where you completely overcome that, you completely bypass that whole system of the concealments and you just not allow the obstacles, the hindrances, the cover-ups, the concealments, the forces of nature, all of the things that are conspiring to cover up the divine truth, and they're actually aligned against you in a specific test and a challenge, and you stick to your connection to the divine truth. That way, you are able to go past the darkness itself, pierce the darkness, and get to an even greater light than you would if you would just be gradually working your way up from looking for light in the light.
Maybe I'm getting ahead. I mean, it didn't fully explain. But there's